Shalom, Hebrews and Shebrews. Welcome to the day's reading with me, Oilfield Disciple. We're going to be reading 1 Samuel chapter 14 and Acts chapter 10. Some really good stuff we're going to look at today. A little bit of commentary here. Try to get through it as quickly as possible, but also with a little understanding. So let me flip the camera around. As per this channel, it ain't about me. It's a little chilly this morning. Kind of balmy weather, but I like it. So, today in 1 Samuel 14, we're going to look at power corrupting man. When man gets a little bit of authority, if he doesn't have a right heart, it goes to his head. I've seen power go to people's head before. I've had friends that got promoted up, and when they got promoted up, the power went to their heads. And as I got promoted up through the ranks, I did my best not to allow that to happen. It's going to happen to some degree, regardless. I mean, you are in command of things, and you are responsible for what you're put in charge of, and so it can puff you up with pride a little bit. You know, I know out here in the oil field, there's a sense of pride among us that do this work day in and day out. But you can have a righteous pride, but you can have an unrighteous pride at the same time. So let's look at this. 1 Samuel 14 says, "It came to be one day that Jonathan, son of Saul, said to the young man who bore his armor, 'Come, let us go over to the outpost of the Philistines, which is on the other side.' But he did not inform his father. And Shaul remained at the outskirts of Geba under a pomegranate tree at Migron. And the people who were there with him were about 600 men. And Ahiah, son of Ahitub, Ichabod's brother, son of Phinehas, son of Eli, the priest of Yahweh in Shiloh, was wearing a shoulder garment, and the people did not know that Jonathan had gone." So Jonathan done slipped off out without telling anybody. "And between the passes by which Jonathan sought to go over to the outpost of the Philistines, there was an edge of a rock on one side and an edge of a rock on the other. And the name of one was Botzets, and the name of the other Sanah. The one edge was on the north, opposite of Michmash, and the other on the south, opposite of Geba. And Jehonathan said to the young man who bore his armor, 'Come, let us go over to the outpost of the uncircumcised. If so be, Yahweh does work for us, for there is no hindrance for Yahweh to save by many or by few.'" Jonathan knows that if they're going to win the battle, it doesn't matter if he's got 2 men with him or 2 million men with him. Yahweh's got him, or he doesn't. That's something to note. Yahweh's for us, or he's not. Do we have that faith? Jonathan obviously does. Verse 7, "And his armor bearer said to him, 'Do all that is in your heart. Incline yourself. See, I am with you according to your heart.'" And Jonathan's got a right-hand man. Whatever you want to do, let's get it done. If you're going to go, I'm going to go. If you're going to live, I'm going to live with you. If you're going to die, I'm going to die with you. And Jonathan said, "See, we are passing over to the men, and show ourselves to them. If they say this to us, wait until we come to you. Then we shall stand still in our place and not go up to them. But if they say this, come up to us, then we shall go up, for Yahweh has given them into our hand, and this is the sign to us." And both of them disclosed themselves to the outpost of the Philistines. Now, so you understand that Jonathan, he's made a declaration that if it goes down like this, Yahweh's with us. But if it goes down like that, Yahweh's not with us. It's kind of dangerous. I don't advise doing it today. You can be tripped up with the devil. You can be tripped up with your own mind, your own pride. But we're going to see it's going to work out for Jonathan here. Which, you know, I mean, we look at Gideon, it also works out for Gideon whenever he calls on the fleece to be wet and the ground dry, and then to be dry and the ground wet, a fleece from God. I don't know, I see that as very dangerous. We can read into it our own minds. Verse 11, and both of them disclosed themselves to the outposts of the Philistines, and the Philistines said, see, the Hebrews are coming out of holes where they have hidden. They think they're going to start coming out from all over the place. I mean, why would just two men just show up to go to battle against the Philistines? And I've read this a couple times this morning. I usually don't read first. I usually just read, and it's new to me as it is to y'all. But I knew there was going to be a lot in this one that I wanted to make sure I had some clarity. And as far as I can see, it's just Jonathan and the dude carrying his armor. You know, his right-hand man. And so they see him come out, and they're, what idiot would only show up to battle with two people? You know? A crazy man in love with Yahweh. That's who. And the men of the outpost called to Jonathan and his armor bearer and said, come up to us and let us teach you a lesson. And then Jonathan said to his armor bearer, come up after me, for Yahweh has given them into the hand of Israel. Jonathan said, all right, baby, game on. You said the wrong thing to the wrong dude at the wrong time. And Jonathan climbed up on his hands and knees with his armor bearer after him, and they fell before Jonathan, and his armor bearer was putting them to death behind him. And that first smiting which Jonathan and his armor bearer struck was about 20 men, and about half an acre of land. And there was trembling in the camp, in the field, and among all the people in the outpost. And the raiders also trembled, and the ground shook, and it became trembling of Elohim. And the watchmen of Shaul and Gibeah of Benjamin looked and saw the crowd melting away, and they went here and there. And Shaul said to the people who were with him, please inspect and see who is gone from us. And so they inspected and saw that Jonathan and his armor bearer were missing. And Shaul said to Ahijah, bring the ark of Elohim here, for the ark of Elohim was with the children of Israel on that day. And it came to be, while Shaul talked to the priest, that the noise which was in the camp of the Philistines went on and become great. So Shaul said to the priest, withdraw your hand. So they're shouting, they're running. It's kind of chaotic, that I can tell. The Lord has just shook the earth, making Saul know that someone with authority has called upon the name of the Lord. Saul's not completely ignorant. You know, we read that into him sometimes. Saul's not completely ignorant. He's just puffed up with pride. And that manifests itself as stupidity most often. Where'd we go? Verse 20. And Shaul was called, and all the people who were with him, and they went to battle. And see, every man's sword was against his neighbor, a great confusion. And the Hebrews were with the Philistines before that time, who went up with them into the camp, turned around, they too to be with Israel. So there were some Hebrews living amongst the Philistines, apparently, and they turned coat on them and stood with Israel, who were with Saul and Jonathan. And all the men of Israel who had hidden in the mountains of Ephraim heard that the Philistines fled, and they also pursued them in battle. Thus Yahweh saved Israel that day, and the battle passed over to Beth Aven. Beth Aven means house of vanity. Kind of like that battle was for naught. That was a waste of time. And the men of Israel were distressed that day, for Shaul had placed the people under an oath, saying, cursed be the man who eats food until evening, and I am avenged on my enemies. Therefore, none of the people tasted food. So they go to battle, they're fighting, and when they get done, Saul puts a mandate on them. Nobody gets to eat till sundown. Good king, ain't he? The people were warned this was the kind of man they were going to get to be their king. And all they of the land came into the woods, and there was honey on the ground. And the people came into the woods and saw the honey dripping, but no one put his hand to his mouth, for the people feared the oath. But Jonathan, who had not heard that his father had taken an oath of the people, and he stretched out the end of the rod that was in his hand and dipped it in the honeycomb, and put his hand to his mouth, and his eyes lit up. Then one of the people said, Your father strictly took an oath of the people, saying, Cursed be the man who eats food today. And the people were weary. And Jonathan said, My father has troubled the land. Now see how my eyes lit up when I tasted a little of this honey. How much better if the people had well eaten today of the spoil of their enemies, which they found. For then, would not the slaughter among the Philistines have been greater? Wouldn't it have been greater to enjoy your victory? Jonathan has a little compassion on his people, you know. He's like, man, I don't care what my father said. And they struck the Philistines that day from Michmash to Avalon. So the people were very weary. So they battled all day long. You know, kind of like, best I can equate it is go swimming for a couple hours and see how hungry you are after you get done swimming. It works your body, every muscle. These people are hungry, and Saul puts a mandate on them where they can't even eat. And the people pounced on the spoil and took the sheep and the cattle and the calves and slew them on the ground, and the people ate with the blood. Now this is where they screw up, because in Leviticus 17, verse 13 and 14, God says, You shall not eat the blood of any flesh. You are to drain the blood, cook it thoroughly, and then eat it, because the life is in the blood. The life of the creature is in the blood. And they told Saul, saying, Look, the people are sinning against Yahweh by eating the blood. And he said, You have acted treacherously. Roll a large stone to me today. So Saul, he's going to try to do something prideful here. He's going to make an altar. That roll a stone to me. He's going to make an altar and have them bring all the animals to slaughter on that altar. And Saul said, Scatter among the people and say to them, Each one bring his ox near me, and each one his sheep, and you shall slay them here and eat. And do not sin against Yahweh by eating with the blood. So every one of the people brought his ox with him that night, and they slew it there. Now see, Saul's doing what God says, but he's doing it from a heart of, look at me, I'm doing this righteously. It's kind of like the Pharisees we see in the New Testament. Doing this righteous stuff. And so, I mean, you can do the right thing, but do it for the wrong heart, the wrong motives. Yahweh's not going to see that. Verse 35. And Saul built a slaughter place to Yahweh, which is an altar, and it was the first slaughter place he built to Yahweh. And Saul said, Let us go down after the Philistines by night and plunder them until morning light, and not leave a man of them. And they said, Do whatever seems good to you. So the people is just like, You're going to do what you want to do anyway, Saul. But the priest said, Let us draw near to Elohim here. And Shaul asked of Elohim, Should I go down after the Philistines? Do you give them to the hand of Israel? But he did not answer them that day. I ain't got no part of Saul right now. Saul's in this for his own glory. And I guarantee you, when we walk like that and operate like that in this world, I don't care if you're doing right or not. Like my brother used to say, there's good and there's God. And Shaul said, Come over here, all you chiefs of the people, and know and see what this sin was today. For as Yahweh lives, who saves Israel, though it be in Jonathan, my son, he shall certainly die. But not one among all the people answered him. And he said to Israel, You be on one side, and my son Jonathan, and I be on the other. And the people said to Shaul, Do what seems good to you. Again, you're going to do what you want to do. Then Shaul said to Yahweh Elohim of Israel, Give a perfect lot. And Shaul and Jonathan were taken, but the people escaped. And Shaul said, Cast lots between my son and me. And Jonathan was taken. Shaul then said to Jonathan, Explain to me what you have done. And Jonathan explained to him and said, I only tested a little honey with the end of the rod that was in my hand, so let me die. And Shaul answered, Elohim do so, and more also, for you shall certainly die, Jonathan. But the people said to Shaul, Should Jonathan die, who has wrought this great salvation in Israel? Far be it. As Yahweh lives, let not one hair of his head fall on the ground, for he has wrought with Elohim this day. Thus the people ransomed Jonathan, and he did not die. Call that intercessory actions. When all the people stand and say something. See, they're going along with Saul no matter what he says until it's time to kill Jonathan for no reason. And they're like, no, hell no. We're standing for that. And Saul has enough sense that he steps back because of the people and their numbers. And that's what I'm saying here about this COVID stuff. When they go to shutting your businesses down, if you'll just keep your businesses open and the community will rally around you in numbers, they're not going to keep pushing this. But as long as you keep bowing down to it, you know, whatever you want to do, kind of like the Israelites right here. Whatever you want to do, Saul, you're the king. You're going to do it anyway. They're going to keep doing whatever they want to do. Verse 46, and Shaul returned from pursuing the Philistines, and the Philistines went to their own place. And Shaul took the reign over Israel, and fought against all his enemies round about, against Moab, and against the children of Ammon, and against Edom, and against the kings of Sobah, and against the Philistines, and wherever he turned, he inflicted punishment. And he gathered an army, and struck the Amalekites, and delivered Israel from the hands of those who plundered them. And the sons of Shaul were Jonathan, and Yishwi, and Malchishua, and the names of his 2 daughters were these. The name of the firstborn were Merab, and the name of the younger Michal. And the name of Shaul's wife was Ahinoam, and the daughter of Ahimaaz. And the name of the commander of his army was Abner, son of Ner, uncle of Shaul. And Kish was the father of Shaul, and Ner, the father of Abner, was the son of Abiel. And there was tough fighting against the Philistines all the days of Shaul, meaning all the days of his reign, constantly fighting with the Philistines. And when Shaul saw any mighty man or any brave man, he took him for himself. Meaning, as he went throughout Israel, every time he's seen someone who had ability that he's seen, he just drafted them into his army. Didn't ask if he wanted to be, you're in the army now. Remember, that's what Samuel told them, that your sons will be taken for war without your consent, without you caring. It doesn't matter. The king is going to do what he wants to do. And here we see it. Now, as we close that chapter, and it said that Saul had fighting with the Philistines all his days. What we're fixing to look at now is we're going to go and look at a different time frame as we start chapter 15 tomorrow. When we're reading scripture, keep that in mind, how it flows and what's done. Otherwise, you'll think, wait a minute, ain't this chronological? And it not be chronological. Well, I'm going to let that be the video today. It's 20 minutes. We're not going to get to Acts, or we'd have a 45-minute video, because actually Acts 10, I want to discuss quite a bit of stuff in that one too. So y'all be blessed, be encouraged, and always be frustrated. It's the Wolf-Filled Disciple, and I'll catch you on the next reading.